Boom, we did it. Thank goodness. Thank you so much for coming on today. I know we rescheduled this a few times to talk about today's issue. Would you like to start by introducing yourself and just know a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Osama. I use the I guess display name Eagle Left everywhere. So I am a Baloch from Pakistan. If people don't know, Balochistan is one of the provinces of Pakistan, and Baloch are one of the ethnicities because Pakistan is very, very diverse.
So I think for most people, they don't know much about the diversity of Pakistan. Most people just know there's Pakistanis, and that's really all. They just like
Yeah.
it's just a country. So how diverse is Pakistan? How many different groups make up this country?
I don't have the number of ethnicities off the
Just a
top of my
broad
head,
idea
but
to give the idea
yeah.
how diverse Pakistan is.
Yeah, that's the number of languages spoken in Pakistan is upwards of 70. So that would give you an idea.
Does this
There's
cause a
like
lot of like
seven.
regional differences or complications? Somebody travels from one
Yeah.
part of Pakistan, they might not understand somebody on the other side of Pakistan at all.
So there's a sort of second language for most people. For a very few amount of people, is the first language called Urdu, which people might know of because that's what they think of with Pakistan. Hindi and Urdu are very similar languages. So that's how we communicate, is using that language.
Got you.
If you're like in a village or something, then you have problems, of course. They didn't learn Urdu, for example.
Understood. So you're from the Baloch people, is that correct? Is that the correct pronunciation for it?
Yeah, the Baloch.
So what makes the Baloch people distinct from other groups? Do they have certain dress practices, certain music practices? What are some identifying features of the people?
Um, so the Baloch would generally be people who speak four languages, and one of them is Balochi, which is distinct to just the Baloch people. Then there's Baravi, which some of the people who speak Baravi are also Baloch, but not all of them. And then Sindhi and Saraiki, which again, Sindhi people are different in Saraiki. Some other people also speak Saraiki. The other thing is like their own, I guess, knitting culture. Like if you look at embroidery and you know the differences, then you can tell, okay, this person's wearing a Balochi style dress. And like we wear in Pakistan, a lot of people wear shalwar kameez. The way we stitch like our shalwar kameez is sort of different as well. So you can tell by the people if they're wearing a Baloch stitched a piece of clothing. Of course, the musical and if you go into it, the musical and linguistic traditions are different as well, because the Baloch come from somewhere in Iran. Like they migrated there, they were Bedouins, and like the eastern side of Pakistan is mostly people that are more in the Indian sphere, and western side, which is Balochistan, and KPK, which is another western province, they're more closely related to Iran and Afghanistan.
So most people, again, don't know much about the different minority groups that make up Pakistan, let alone Balochistan, which is, I believe this is a people who make up not a very large percent of the population. I believe the last numbers I checked, it was something between 10 to 20% of the population of Pakistan. I believe maybe you could correct my numbers. And so if you're not in this region of Pakistan, if you've only seen Pakistan in popular media, most might not even know that this people existed. So when these recent reports came out of a train hijacking, which I'm sure you're familiar with,
Yes.
and maybe you can talk about the details. I'd want you to talk about it so we don't just hear about it from some like head-grabbing headline. They're getting introduced to this conflict for the first time through a major train hijacking, and they have no clue why these people are angry. They have no clue where this violence is coming from, and they have no idea where the history is. So first, can you talk about what happened with this train hijacking and why exactly did it happen? What social issues are contributing to violence based in Baloch rights?
Yeah, so the train hijacking was done by a militant separatist group called the Balochistan Liberation Army, BLA. And they are a group that was created like as a sort of insurgency because of the various human rights abuses that the Pakistani state, especially the military, has done. And ever since Pakistan has found the Baloch people have been a dispossessed people, so this particular group was sort of formed in response to one of the times when the army specifically got really violent, because there's like phases. Sometimes there's less one, sometimes there's more, and increasingly they've become more extremized. So in the past they didn't used to attack civilians, and then in the I believe the late 2000s they started attacking some teachers and other people of other ethnicities, which they said were sort of outsiders. But then because of it not being a popular thing, they stopped again. And in the 2010s there weren't a lot of that happening, but they've basically become even more extreme. I think part of it is because they've interacted with the Taliban, and that has resulted in them being a bit more extreme. So they hijacked this train, and their claim is that they were after the military and they let the civilians go. The military says that no, they're just hijacked everyone. And it was like basically what they do is attack things they think would either cause like trouble for the military or cause trouble for Pakistan, exploiting their resources or stuff like that. Like they've attacked Chinese workers, they've attacked a lot of military outposts and people they claim are working with the military. So this was sort of that where they wanted to. Their claim was that there were a lot of military officials on that train, and that's what they were going after.
So they do this hijacking. It does. Of course, it ends with most of the hijackers being killed. A shootout. It does not end with success. And their goal, according to the organization, is an independent state for the Baloch people. That's
Yes.
what they're pursuing through, and they're willing to use violent means. Now, from the data that I've seen, indicates that the majority of the Baloch people don't actually necessarily want an independent state necessarily to completely separate themselves from Pakistan. There are people who want that, but there's a lot who maybe would take a more moderate position of more regional autonomy, more local rights over, for example, mineral resources. Because it seems like one of the big issues, or one of the primary issues, and I want to make sure we take time for this, is that Baloch people believe that the resources from this southwestern part of Pakistan are being extracted from the region, and then the wealth from that is being moved elsewhere, and it is not benefiting the locals, which is what is a big motivator for people to radicalize towards the idea of maybe we need autonomy, or even further, an independent state, because if the Pakistanis will not give us their own wealth, then maybe we have to take it. Am I anywhere close to what's going on?
That is one of the factors. Another is that socially, the Pakistani state has always wanted to like basically create this sort of illusion that there's just a Pakistani people like you said, people think, and they're not like diverse groups, and trying to create a monoculture of sorts. And the people who are like who are the majority group, the Punjabis, their culture sort of dominates that, and that's what most people think when they think Pakistan is more that Punjabi culture. And the Baloch and other groups want their own cultural identity maintained, and basically, yeah, as you said, like rights related to economics and civil rights on top of that. They've always treated the Baloch as sort of outsiders and troublemakers. Like the state is more interested in the land and its resources, and not that interested in developing, like helping the people. If you look at any metric, the Balochistan would be the worst of state, worst of province of Pakistan, like poverty index. If you look at that, how much electricity people get, how many people are given like natural gas or something for their homes, uh, what like development is done, jobs, programs, everything basically. So Balochistan has never felt like it was part of Pakistan, like treated as such. And that plus how Balochistan was incorporated into Pakistan in the beginning gets some people to think that maybe we should just be independent, while others just want to be equal rights in the be equal citizens in Pakistan.
Could you talk to me about what's feasible? Is an independent Balochistan, as advocated by some more radicals, something that is in any way feasible, anything that's even gotten close to being achieved? When we talk about the more moderate goals of more regional autonomy and more civil, increasing civil rights protections, investing more of the profits from the resources at home, what type of efforts are being made in that arena, and has the government at all been responsive to those requests?
So the major like as with regards to like a separate Balochistan, I feel like the only way that would be possible is if we also got the Balochistan that's in Iran to be part of our Balochistan, and a small part of Afghanistan is also Balochistan. So the Balochistan itself
So,
is
sorry to
basically kind
interrupt,
of
but is
three
it kind of
types.
it's kind of, and I hate to make this comparison, but it feels a little bit like the Kurdish position, where the Kurds, their
No, it's
ethnic groups
exactly.
are separated across Iran, Turkey, Syria, and collecting them across multiple states obviously is going to be very complicated.
Yeah, so then uh, it's the same landmass. It's just cut into three parts because of like colonialization and how it ended up being. And we're kind of like related to the Kurds as well. So the comparison makes sense. Like, yeah, in a sense, Kurds call us, we call each other cousins. That's how close we are. Uh, and with regards to like economic and like civil rights, the problem with the Pakistani state is its military has a very colonial way of thinking. And in early Pakistan, our military was literally trained by British colonialists because Pakistan was a new state that didn't have any structure, and the British, some of the British army stayed behind and trained the Pakistani soldiers. So they kind of think like old school British colonialists. And the response to everything is violence. Like when Baloch protests, they use live rounds to kill us, and there's a lot of mass disappearances. They used to like do this thing where it's called kill and dump, where they kill people and then dump them on the side of roads, and they started doing that again.
What was the
And we
dumping?
have civil rights.
Was the dumping? I know I hate to get into specifics of this, but do you
Yeah.
believe the dumping was part of just, we don't care, we're disposing of the body, or was it part of an intimidation tactic of, here is the body, here is what will happen to you?
I think it is both that they don't see like they have no regard for the Baloch as humans, but also to create an atmosphere of like dread. Like you can be picked up from anywhere and then killed and dumped anywhere. Like it's never like in the area that the person lived. They might abduct someone from one village and then dump them on the road completely on the other side of the province. And Another aspect of it is that they
Is this
did
an
a
active
lot.
process? Is this something that's still ongoing, or is this something that is a historical practice?
So they used to do it, but what they continue to do was disappear people. So they used to abduct people and then they didn't return, and they kept doing that, and they're still doing it. And now the killing and dumping thing has started again as well. Now they're like the people who were they disappeared, who they like took and abducted. They've started dumping some of them, people who have been missing for months or years. And the way they do it is varied as well. Sometimes it's just like the body itself. Sometimes the body is broken, like bones and everything are broken. Sometimes they chop the bodies up and put them in like flour bags and throw it on the side of the road. So
This
until
reminds me
someone
eerily
opens it, they don't know.
of the bodies that would turn up after they went through the Assad system, where like the student protester just gets like picked off the street, and then weeks later, the family finds their body on some street corner, and it's like a bloated mess. You can't. It's barely hard to recognize. Um, I
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry, you're gonna say something.
yeah. Another aspect of it, which is even more insidious, is like when they abduct people, because they've been doing that a lot. They might not necessarily abduct you for protesting. They might, but they might not. They might abduct your brother or sister or father or mother or child. So there's no like, if you protest, it's not just only you're in danger. Everyone around you is, your family is in danger as well. Your friends are in danger.
This is eerily similar of a lot of authoritarian regimes, but I wanted to specify on
Yeah.
this one because if I was in elementary school and I was looking at a big list of all the world's democracies and not democracies, many would say Pakistan is a democracy. Um, what is the state of Pakistani democracy? Because my interactions with it as of recent has just been in relation to the arrest of their former president, I believe Mr. Khan, and how that has caused
Honestly.
a big crisis, political crisis within the country, and of course the storied history of any time we go into the region and I see the three letters ISI, which is attached to everything positive, always a good thing.
The I, the ISI is kind of like the CIA, if like of old, not the current CIA, but the CIA of old, where you heard they did some very shady stuff. That's basically the ISI. And the thing with Imran Khan is, even though it got a lot more attention, it's not that new. Like Imran Khan was actually chosen by the military in a way, and they did it to the opposition leaders of Imran Khan before. The only thing, the reason Imran Khan is in being arrested right now is because he got too big for his britches, and he just wanted like, he's kind of like a Trumpian type figure. He just wanted all the power for himself, so he couldn't maintain that for a long time. But other parties sort of maneuver around the military. Like sometimes they're in favor, sometimes they're not. There are guys who spent like 10 years in prison and then they became prime minister. And Pakistani democracy is it's kind of like, there's been times when it's not a democracy at all. There's been half of Pakistan has been just direct military dictatorship, and the other half is varying degrees of military control or not. Like they call it a hybrid regime or something like that. And
Cool.
the weakest
By
of
the way,
Pakistani
for those of you
military
who
was
don't know, Pakistan was created shortly after World War II, and so it's a more recent national creation. This is like there wasn't like a Pakistan 250 year. There's not like a historical Pakistan that people can call upon. It is a modern creation. And in that time, it has gone through different waves of military dictatorships. Then it'd be an area of reform, but then the reform would be overthrown by another military dictatorship. It's like I don't really like how this is going. It's a way how flawed democracies fail, collapse, start again, fail again. That cycle.
yeah. And the history is interesting as well because when they were found, India and Pakistan both, even though India as a concept people think is like ancient as well, the way India is formalized is also just a modern creation because there was no united India. So when independence was happening, the local areas all wanted like regional autonomy because they were always distinct regions in India and in Pakistan. But the British basically said you get to choose either India or Pakistan. And Balochistan, where I'm from, was never part of the Indian sphere at all. We were completely we were connected more to Iran and a different thing. And we were independent from August 19, I think July 1947 to March 1948. And Pakistan was formed in August 1947. So for like 6 or 7 some months, we were independent from them. And then they annexed us. So that's also why there's always been tensions, because there was never we didn't start off with them from the beginning. And even though there were interactions, the independence struggle in India was a separate thing from us.
It wasn't you were not connected to the same struggle. There was not a blocked attachment to we need to be separate from. They didn't feel attached to that movement.
No, so
And I hate to make you the spokesperson for yes, every single person. Because I'm sure there was probably some Baloch soldier who had some amazing record of sniping 20 dudes or what. I'm sure that there was people, but I'm talking about broad historical trends.
Yeah, so the Baloch, India had an independence movement earlier. I'm very bad with dates, but it was sometime in the 1800s. And the Baloch, some of the Baloch went there to help because the Baloch were also under the British Raj. So that's the only reason, that was the only shared thing in that way. And of course there was trade and stuff, but we're always more in the Persian sphere, Iran's sphere of influence and all the different kingdoms that came. Balochistan was not part of the Mughal Empire or any of the different sultanates that that region had. It's essentially that because Iran didn't have us, and Iran wasn't that stable back then either. The Pakistanis just had power and they took us.
So
we had no way of opposing that. So
I want to make sure we drag us back into modern days. I'd like to learn more about the history, but I'm sure you can send me links afterwards so I can learn more on my own. I want to bring us back to modern because we only have so much time.
Yeah, I can do a quick speed through, and if people want to go through the phases, then I did in 2023. I did something with Matt Binder where I talk about the history, and people can search Eagle Left.
And where people are. That's where I recognize you from. I think. I mean, I've seen you in my chat before, but I'm I recognize this voice very distinct. Matt Binder. That's it.
Yeah, I talked with him a lot, but I can quickly go through it. So Pakistan formed, and they went through all their history up to the modern times. The Baloch were always the problem child, and there were they oppressed us. We had independence movements. There's been 4 or 5 different independence movements. The current one started in 2007. 2006, 2007, when the dictator at that time, because Pakistan was a dictatorship back then, Musharraf, killed a really respected tribal leader who was really old, called Nawab Akbar Bukti, who was sort of talking about Baloch rights back then. And instead of negotiating, he just bombed them. He was in he knew that they were going to come, so he hid in a mountain. They just bombed the mountain, and then they didn't even let people see the body. They basically did a closed casket, hush-hush type burial. And I was a child back then, but I remember that everything was closed down. There was a sort of what do you call it? Curfew on all,
curfew.
the entire Balochistan. Yeah, and for 2 or 3 weeks. I think it was. You can search it up, but I think it was 2006 or 2007.
No, I meant what time the curfew was.
It was
8 p.m. to 6 a.m. You're not allowed to be out, or.
No. The only time you could go out was alone to get groceries. My father would go and get stuff, and that's it.
So it was a constant curfew. Unless you're going out for groceries, you cannot go outside. Groceries or work, I presume.
For 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, because they were so afraid of a full uprising happening all at once. So they tightened that up. And the military was sort of losing power in the 2010s before Imran Khan, the one who's in prison right now. So that was when we were a bit more like the civilian government was a bit more receptive. It was, of course, not perfect, but things were developing a bit. Then the military sort of got this guy because they're very good at rigging elections, even if they're not in power. And then they got Imran Khan, and during his reign, like, and the COVID times and everything, they got most of their power back. They had like a sort of power struggle.
Did they
between
also
the
use the
elites. Yeah.
bamboo paper like we did here to steal it from Trump?
The bamboo pen. No, they just did very like they just had like in Balochistan we never had a fair election, but there are people with guns and they're telling you, okay, vote for that guy. Or
Is it
they'll
really?
be like,
Is it really that
okay.
blatant? It's just like,
Burns is
hello,
a
I have
In some
guns.
places.
Vote.
morally corrupt, bankrupt man.
In some places. In other places, what they do is they have these bags with filled up stuff already, and they
Burns is a
deliver them to
morally
the
corrupt,
counting sites,
bankrupt man.
and then they take away the actual votes. So they're like.
Ballot
And in
stuffing.
some places they were like legitimate. Yeah, in some places they were legitimate elections.
Burns is a
But another
moral,
tactic they have is
morally
in
corrupt,
Pakistan there are
bankrupt
these politicians that aren't loyal to any party. They just go wherever the wind is, and they're more corruptible. And the military sort of
man.
military sort of can manipulate them more. The military can tell them, okay, go into this party. So they'll just jump parties before the election, and they're popular locally because of whatever reasons.
Oh, well,
historically.
you know what?
Like,
there's,
Burns is
I
a
understand this style of
morally
politician.
corrupt,
I mean, I see it in
bankrupt
Eastern
man.
Europe, but I also still see it, in old party politics in the States where there's that's old, like Senator Billy. He got the old bridge there, so I don't care if he takes 90% of our tax dollars to, do the bridge.
Yep.
It's named after Billy. It's Billy's bridge. It must be Billy. So. Or something along those
Or like-
lines. Or they hand out, it's like as blatant as, he gave me a bag of wheat. I will always love Billy, even though they could have probably
or,
given him a whole
yeah.
new road instead of the wheat if he wasn't such a
Or
drunk
like
bastard.
yeah, his grandfather did something, so now we're loyal to the family. Or he's the local lord, like, because of course feudalism is still still has vestiges that come from there. So stuff like that.
What would
And,
you say? I'm sorry to ask, but I
yeah,
am very
sure.
curious. What do you think about the development of the civil tradition of democracy? This is something that's very fascinating to me because there's a real question of when the United States went into Afghanistan, and there was this idea of, I remember John Bolton's idea was go in there, kill the guys we got to kill, drop the Constitution and get out, because we're not going to be able to develop a democracy with these people. And other people disagreed, and they tried. And obviously the American style system that we tried to bring did not end up flourishing by the time we left. And there's always this question of how much of it was us not knowing local customs and traditions, us not developing a system that's for the local geography and tribal systems, instead of us trying to just hyperimpose our American style system that kind of worked in Japan a little bit, but not really. They kind of changed it too. Or is it that there's legitimately not a tradition there of, I agree with your values, so I'm going to vote with you. Oh, I agree with your values, I'm going to vote with you. And I agree that we can all do this peacefully and democratically. And if we lose, we lose. How much of it is actual personal tradition versus, you get what I'm trying to get at. This is something I think about a
Yeah.
lot.
I think with Afghanistan, it's hard because the state is kind of like Mexico in a way, where there's a center and then there's mountains, and then you have to. It's hard to govern. Plus, the way the Americans did it was working with local warlords. So, of course, people aren't going to like the system where you're working with the local warlord. You've heard of Bachabazi?
Yeah,
right? Which is
I
like
don't think
when
the local boy rapist death king is necessarily developing the most
Yeah.
equitable social structure.
So Pakistan has more of a case for it because there were like intellectuals that were, the Red Scare killed a lot of our intellectuals too. So thank you for that. They basically there were like communists and socialists and all that were developing in the 60s and 70s, and because the state was more like obsessed with power and how the Bangladesh thing happened. where they were basically genociding the Bengalis and they got their own state. In like, I can possibly see a world where that culture is there so it can develop, but the army keeps getting in the way. So like in modern times, there's an actual resistance movement in Balochistan called Baloch Jati Council, BYC. And in the past, there was a civil movement that's been hollowed out but sort of recovering. And it was like the Balochistan National Movement, BNP. And there's other group, Pashtun people, which are the same ones in Afghanistan, that have Pashtun Tahaffuz movement. And there are Sindhi groups as well. So there are groups that are working for civil rights and stuff. But then the military's response, especially for Baloch people, and they're more strict for us because we're in the periphery, and one of the least populous ones, they just shoot you or disappear you. Like our leader, a leader of the movement BYC, is Dr. Marang Baloch, and she's nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And this sort of goes back to the train incident that happened. So when they did the train incident, right, and the militants died, their bodies were transported to the local hospital in Quetta, the civil hospital. And what the army does is they mix in people they've killed, like students or civil rights protesters or lawyers. They mix them into the militants, and they claim, oh, they didn't disappear. They were just with the militants in the mountains, and we fought them and they died. So these people who are protesting for their people who are disappeared, a lot of them are women because they just get rid of the men anyways. They went into the hospital trying to find their loved ones. And for the military tried to stop them and used live rounds, and 3 people died. Then the military said, oh, you incited terrorism.
Wait, the Pakistani military shot families as they were trying to see the bodies of those who had died in the train incident.
Yeah. No. These were the bodies of what they call militants. But what they do is they mix in people who they took hostage. So because we know this, the protesters were like, okay, we need to see if one of our people who they disappeared are one of these. And the military shot them. And then they charged the people, the protesters, with terrorism, and they abducted the leader, Dr. Marang Baloch, who's still missing. And this is someone who's been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. But that part doesn't come in like news and everything, because it's never come up. But it used to be way worse. But there are some resources like the link I showed of the BalochistanPost.net. Before it was just a black hole. It was just word of mouth, because all journalists are afraid of coming in Balochistan and reporting. There's no international.
The Balochistan Post.
.net, yeah, because there's a Balochi version and then English version. If you do the BalochistanPost.com, it'll be Balochi. If you do the BalochistanPost.net, it's English.
Understood. I wanted to ask specifically about the fact that there has been a surge in Baloch separatist activity in recent years. And this train incident is not completely isolated. This isn't just like a random event that came out of nowhere. And I wanted to ask about why it has specifically surged in recent times. And you talked about a little bit of the recent history, but I also wanted to connect this to an American audience who might be much more familiar with the war on terror and how the Taliban has actually made it so, or at least contributed to a security situation that has left a little bit of a vacuum or security vacuum, which has allowed this to take place, or not allowed it to take place, but has weakened the government's position somewhat.
I would compare it more to like what Israel is doing or what India does, because the military, in regards to like actual protests, because they were still disappearing people, right? So protest movements like the one I mentioned developed, where the people were protesting against enforced disappearances and also against foreign companies like China and Canada and others that are all coming in and not employing the locals, taking away the resources, them working. And the China especially has this huge project with Pakistan called CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And a big part of that is the port in Balochistan called Gwadar, which is like an easy way for China to bypass all the Taiwan drama, all the Southeast Asian Sea drama, and just ship things that way. So because of that, the military, when the civilian leadership weakened, the military got more of its power. They just started attacking people and disappearing more of them. That led to a rise in separatism as well, because when there's more like oppression and people think that there's no civil way out of it, then they join disillusioned young people join militancy groups.
Do you not believe the Taliban contributed at all to the current security situation? Because the way because
they did.
Because I was listening to a lot of Western commentators at least emphasize that. Of course, I think that's probably part of the problem. They're not emphasizing local conditions, creating more civil discontent, and they're more emphasizing what they know, which is Taliban. But is there any contribution at all by some people have called it ISI backfire due to their historical relationship with the Taliban?
So one thing that's like a bit that disingenuous from the West is blaming it on Pakistan, because the US and Saudi Arabia were also part of extremizing the Mujahideen, which became the Taliban. So it's not like just Pakistan was evil and did it. But with the Taliban specifically, I think they have done more extremists. Like there's been more extremism from them, but that's like a more religious flavor, and they do it in Pakistan as well. There's something called Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is like different from the Taliban Afghanistan, but sort of the same ideological. So there's a connection in that. Another connection is when Balochistan was oppressing people, a lot of separatist groups went into Afghanistan, because there's, like I said, part of Balochistan is in Afghanistan as well. And when the Taliban was like in outs with Pakistan and the US and all that, they protected them. So their ideology sort of seeped through a bit as well. Like I said, they were more extremized because of that. With regards to like a rise in separatist movements and that instability, I think the instability inside Pakistan is more a making of its own military rather than the Taliban sort of pressuring it that way, I believe.
Okay, I have to wrap it up for the night. I have company, so I want to make sure that I can go deal with that. But I want to say thank you for coming on. I wanted to make sure that you had time to come on and talk about this, because this is something that gets very little attention. And while I don't have a very big platform, if I can help give it a little bit of attention in a little way, then I want to do that. Where should people go to learn more? I know obviously the Balochistan Post is probably one resource that you can direct them towards. And where can people find anything you're working on, if there's anything you want to throw that for people to look at?
I mean, I'm eager left on like any platform that I'm on. I do not stream that much, so but I want to, but I don't. But I repost stuff from like different stuff around the world. So some of that might be for Balochistan on Twitter or X, I think, and in Blue Sky. I think you can follow, and I think they're also on Facebook. BYC, which is the Baloch Yakjahati Council, they talk about a lot of that stuff. And if you search Balochistan or Baloch on Twitter, and there's a lot of posts from people who are talking about that stuff. The sad part is, again, because international journalists don't come here, so information is it's always more word of mouth, and there's some journalism that, like the Balochistan Post, that you can look at.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on and making time to talk about this and giving us your expertise and knowledge.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Oh, I forgot to say this in the beginning. I've said it in when I've talked about it before. I'm not an expert or a journalist. I'm just a random Baloch talking about it because
that's true. But your basic experience is expertise in comparison to a world that doesn't even know the basics of the struggle at all. So maybe I shouldn't say expert as in your studied historian, but You're the person in the room that knows anything.
A lived experience. But
Lived
yeah, that's the
experience.
yeah, because unless people talk about, like you said, we're not that many. So unless outside pressure comes, the military doesn't care.
Thank you so much for coming on,
Okay.
man. You have a good night. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one. You too. Bye.
If you want to support the channel, you can do it at DylanBurns.tv. I want to thank Maximus for the gifteds. I saw that, so I didn't give you a shout out earlier. It was just, you know, in the middle of that interview, so I didn't want to like throw that interview in the middle of it.